Hello and good afternoon. I am Muhammad Muzammal and I will be presenting about virtual reality in computer engineering education. This is the second edition of International Conference on Virtual Reality, and I'm happy to tell that I was also part of the first event, and it was a great event. And I hope that next time, the third edition of this conference is is not online, but it is a live event, so we are able to uh, meet new colleagues and see new friends. Dr. Dursan invited me for this talk, and I'm very grateful. So, a brief introduction about myself. I'm an associate professor and head of department at the Department of Computer Science, Bahria University, Islamabad, Pakistan. I'm also a visiting associate professor at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. I did my PhD from University of Leicester, UK, and I'm affiliated with Bahria University since 2009. Right, so before I start my presentation, I formally thank uh, the organizers for providing me this opportunity. And I also congratulate Dr. Dorson and the organizers for arranging this event in spite of the difficult situations we are facing due to COVID-19. Okay, so the topic of my presentation is virtual reality in computer engineering education. So virtual reality actually is it is a few things, which includes computer technologies that use software basically with the support of some hardware uh, to generate some images, sounds, and other sensations which actually enable a real life environment or a real environment. So the idea is that by using computer software and computer hardware, which actually falls under the category of computer engineering, we are able to create a real world like environment, and then we can actually reap the benefits out of this real world like environment. So pardon me if my voice becomes a bit unpleasant. I'm actually having a bit of a flu and sore throat. I hope that I'm understandable and audible to the audience. Right. So VR simulates users' physical presence in a virtual environment by enabling users to interact with the virtual space and the objects which are there in the virtual space. And this happens by way of specialized display screens or projectors or HMDs, as you can see in the picture right now. So typically, virtual reality, you can see it actually in many different application domains. For example, the point A, which you can see here, what you are seeing is a construction process being shown with the help of a marker as a actual assembly line or a construction work. Then here again there is a marker, and what you can see is actually what is happening inside the body. This is actually quite amazing. Here at this, you are uh, with the help of some specialized hardware, you are interacting uh, with an object which actually works in space. This is navigation of the future. So what is going on is that you open your camera of your mobile, and whatever is in the view of the camera, you get the information about that object. For example, if it is a building, it could display what offices are there inside that building, or what is going on there, if any events or anything, or what is the name of the building, like all these kinds of information. So this uh, probably is the navigation of future. This probably are the books of the future. This is the anatomy of the future. So you can see that sorry, virtual reality is actually taking us into the future where the traditional book reading, traditional navigation, traditional anatomy, all these things, or things which we can experience other ways, and things which we are not able to experience by living in this world, all these things, they become actually they become real. Like an environment is created which makes these things real. So this is the power of virtual reality, and all these things which are being shown here, all of them, they one way or the other, they relate with the computer engineering education. So that is why computer engineering education is very virtual reality is very useful if it is employed into computer engineering education. So a person, if using a VR equipment, is typically able to look around the artificial world, and not only look around but also move about in it and interact with the features or items that may be a screen or goggles or something else. So not only that you can look around the artificial world, you can also move about in it, and you can interact with features or items. So you can actually do whatever you can do in a real world. So seeing is not everything. You can also actually get additional information. For example, through speakers or headphones, you can get sounds. There are other sensors which include sight, touch, hearing, smell. So basically, the idea is that an environment is created where the focus is solely on the digital content. So this basically is the idea, that the focus is solely on the digital content. So virtual realities, they are displayed either on a computer monitor or a projector screen, or very commonly seen device which is called HMD, or head mounted display, which you can see here right now. So if, because we are computing people, so if we say that what are the components of a virtual reality system, or what actually goes on in a virtual reality system. So basically what happens is that there is an input processor which controls the input to the information, So basically what happens is, because a human is acting in a virtual environment, so the input is from the human. So this input from the human is mapped to a virtual environment, and the virtual environment responds according to that input, which is actually seen by the individual with the help of the special displays or special kind of display devices such as HMDs. So this input processor actually, the idea is that all the input from the individual has to go to the VR system by way of this input processor. And then there is a simulation processor, which what it does, it is like the main core engine of a VR system. So it takes user input along with the tasks programmed into the world, and it basically maps the input actions of the individual to the virtual environment. For example, if user shakes his hand, or if user points to something, what it actually means. So this simulation processor is actually creating the reality, or it is kind of uh, taking the input and mapping it to the virtual world. So then there is another very important component. It is the rendering processor, and what it does, it actually creates the output to the user. So the rendering process actually does the visual, audio, haptic, and other sensory systems. They are employed into the rendering processor, and the information which was given to the system as an input by the user, the system responds to that information with the help of a response back to the user with the help of the rendering processor. There is a world database. What it does, it stores the object that inhabit the world and scripts that describe actions of those objects. So as I mentioned earlier, that input processor takes the input from the individual, and then the simulation processor maps that input to a virtual environment, and then the rendering processor responds to the individual based on the action of the individual. So all these things, that what happens as a consequence of a particular input, is actually it is stored in a world database, and it comes from the world database. So typically these four components constitute a virtual reality system. So in a virtual reality system, users feel that they are in a virtual world, and it is useful actually for many fields of activity, including computer engineering education and virtual reality applications. There are many virtual reality applications in computer education, which enable students to gain experiences that are uh, maybe they could be hazardous. They could have some hazards, or it may actually not be possible to acquire in real life and learn by doing and living, because there are many phenomena which we actually can't see or can't experience, but they actually occur. So with the help of uh, virtual reality, we can actually make possible uh, such things to experience. So we are able to experience sorry, these. So so when we are able to create a virtual environment, what it does, it actually enhances the students' learning and engagement with the system. Of course, many studies have shown that it improves the quality of learning. The effectiveness of the instructors also increases, and it actually reduces the cost of education without reducing the quality, without compromising the quality of the education. So, in summary, it actually transforms the way educational content is delivered. So, a virtual world is created, which could be real. I mean, when it is replicating a real phenomena, real world phenomena, or it could be imagined. For example, we live in a 3D world, but whatever we see in the book is actually in 2D. So VR can actually create things for us in 3D. So it not only creates that virtual world, but it also allows users to interact with it. And this basically is the power of virtual reality. Okay, as I have already mentioned, that students can learn about a subject by living it. It is kind of experiencing learning. So uh, in when students they are learning through virtual reality, they can actually become so uh, involved in the system that it may appear to some that whether we are in a virtual system or whether it is actually a real system. So virtual reality is actually it can be quite captivating. Okay, another advantage of virtual reality in computer education is that it is possible to scale the learning experience. For example, in laboratories, uh, it is very costly to purchase new equipment. However, with the virtual reality system in place, you can just copy your software, or you can have one particular hardware, and you can learn any kind of experience, any kind of lab with the help of a software. So virtual reality is a scalable learning experience. And yes, you learn by doing things, uh, and this actually is a dilemma in our current education, that people actually learn things by reading about things. Virtual reality makes you learn things by doing things. So uh, so the idea is that students they can actually learn something by actually doing things rather than just reading about something. So for example, this is a virtual science lab. You can see that it is an environment which is just like a virtual. This is just like a real environment. This is a virtual operation theater. So with the help of this equipment, the student is actually able to learn what they are doing and what they want to do. So actually they learn by interacting with the things, and you can see there is nothing actually in this place where this study is being performed. So all this is created with the help of HMD and the sensor which is in the hand of the student. This environment is created in a virtual space. So this is actually quite amazing. So as we all know, this is like visual learning. So it helps people who are like who are not good at reading, or who are like more like visual learners. So virtual reality actually can help these people who probably don't like reading or don't want to read, but when they visually see the things and they interact with the things, they are able to they are able to understand and learn things better. So visual learning is another strong point of virtual reality. Okay, the difficulty with the science related subjects, when we want to learn these subjects, is often from the abstractness and complexity of the learned concepts. And the problem is that many of the concepts which students are reading, they are not easily applied in practice, and lack of understanding of fundamentals actually, it kind of hinders the students to study further, or to understand complex concepts, because the fundamentals are not very clear. And then if we say about specialized equipment used for practical exercises, it is not only expensive, but there has to be a supervisor, and it has to be in a very controlled lab environment. So from a learning point of view, some people, they are more like more nervous rather than uh, able to learn. So in real environments, when the situations, they are difficult or complex, for some people it can be it can be more stressful experience rather than a learning experience. So uh, learning without virtual reality actually has problems. So here we talk about a virtual reality tool, which is Vimela. It is a training application, and we will discuss here that how this tool actually can help in uh, in the with the learning experience of the users, and what is the general feedback of a selected audience about the use of this tool. So Vimela is the architecture of Vimela is like this. So there is uh, one component which is scenario digitalization. So this includes creation of a UML diagram, then creation of a 3D model, actually multiple 3D models, and then technical parameters integration with the system. Then there is a VR environment development part, which includes creation of the main scene, then the user interface development, then user interaction development, and then logic and behavior development. So this is the VR engine, which basically does all the trick. And then is the integration, which is the main scene, the interactive objects and IO functions and parameters. All these things, they are defined, and now the objects, they are able to interact in a virtual environment. Sorry. So this is how factory hall environment in Vimela looks like. This is production and distribution of electric motors in the tool. So these are different labs, and there are many other labs actually in the system, which students can uh, learn from. So the effectiveness or the usability of the tool was assessed by a group of 72 students and 24 academicians using the application in a study. So this was a set of questions which was asked, like there are questions like, for example, that I found the VR part realistic, right? I would like to use the system as part of classes. So these are the questions which actually tell the presented device seem real, right? So these are the questions which I find VR presentation useful for understanding. So for example, we pick question 4, question 9, question 10. We see, okay, what was the response of the people? So you see here. So question 4, 66% of the people, they agree with question 4. Question, for example, 8, right? Question 10. So people strongly agree with these, uh, like VR is useful. They find it useful. They find it realistic, and they think that it helps them with the learning. And similar is for academics. For example, question 4, question 8, question 10. So they have a similar uh, feedback as the students. Academics actually, they rate VR applications higher in many aspects than the students, probably because they are more familiar with the things, so it is easy for them to comment on things which uh, students probably can't. So okay, so it is not that VR does not have any disadvantages. It can be costly. You need to buy specialized hardware for VR. Then VR is attempting to replace reality. It can be addictive as a technology. If you people use VR for too long or for too much exposure to VR, it can have psychological problems, identity problems. It will have other impacts as well. So it's not that VR does not have any disadvantages. It can actually have some health hazards also. For example, it causes dizziness, disorientation, panic. There can be actually medical problems as well. So it can be discomfortable for uncomfortable for eyes, and because you see things in a very artificial environment, and the light in that environment, it can damage your eyes. VR can have negative consequences as well if it is exposed too much to the individuals. But nonetheless, VR is increasingly finding its ways into vehicles, and autonomous vehicles is probably something which is going to happen, and lots of it will include the applications of VR. Then VR environments are increasingly becoming collaborative, and even consumer entertainment is also being based on VR. And one thing which I really like is that VR is being increasingly enhanced with AI, and I think this is something which will the integration of VR with AI. This is something which will be very interesting, and it is something uh, which should be getting a lot of attention in future probably. Okay, this is it for from my side. I thank you all for listening, and I again thank the organizers for inviting me for this talk, and I congratulate the organizers, and especially Dr. Dursan for organizing this event. And I hope that the 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 future version of this event uh, is is on campus or on at a live venue. So thank you very much.